The Blacksmith's Choice by Audrey Sinclair. The hammer struck the red-hot iron with a resounding clang that echoed through the sweltering forge. Sweat dripped from Samuel Crawford's brow as he shaped the horseshoe with practiced precision, his muscled forearms flexing with each powerful blow. The year was 1847, and the small town of Cedar Ridge, Colorado Territory, buzzed with the constant activity of westward expansion. "Mr. Crawford," a breathless voice called from the doorway. Sam paused mid-strike, squinting through the smoky haze toward the entrance. Silhouetted against the brilliant afternoon sun stood a young woman in a traveling dress of deep blue wool, her dark hair escaping from beneath a modest bonnet. She clutched a leather satchel to her chest as if it contained her most precious possessions. "Yes, ma'am?" Sam set down his hammer and wiped his hands on his leather apron. "What can I do for you?" The woman stepped into the forge, her green eyes adjusting to the dim interior. "I'm Margaret O'Sullivan. I've just arrived on the morning stage, and I was told you might have information about employment opportunities for a schoolteacher." Sam's weathered face broke into a surprised smile. "The new teacher? Well, I'll be. We'd heard someone was coming, but..." He gestured toward a wooden chair near his workbench. "Please sit. You must be tired from your journey." Margaret accepted the seat gratefully, smoothing her travel-worn skirts. "Thank you. I've come from Boston, and I confess the trip was more challenging than I anticipated." "Boston?" Sam's eyebrows rose. "That's a considerable distance. What brings a lady from such a fine city to our humble town?" A shadow crossed Margaret's features, but she composed herself quickly. "I sought a fresh beginning, Mr. Crawford. Sometimes circumstances require us to venture beyond familiar territories." Sam nodded, understanding more than she might have expected. "Indeed they do. As for the teaching position, Mrs. Henderson runs the school board. She lives in the White House with green shutters on Main Street. But I should warn you, the previous teacher lasted only 3 months." "Oh." Margaret's confidence wavered. "May I ask why?" "The children here aren't like those pampered youngsters in Boston. Many work alongside their parents from dawn to dusk. They come to school tired, hungry, and sometimes unwilling. It takes someone with particular fortitude to reach them." Margaret straightened her shoulders. "I believe I possess such fortitude, Mr. Crawford. I've faced challenges before." Something in her tone caught Sam's attention. This young woman carried herself with quiet strength despite her obvious exhaustion. "I'm certain you have, Miss O'Sullivan. Tell me, where are you planning to stay?" "I hope to secure lodging at the boarding house." Sam shook his head. "Mrs. Garrett's place burned down 2 weeks ago. There's nowhere suitable for a respectable lady in this town." Margaret's face paled. "I see. Perhaps I could inquire about temporary arrangements until—" "You could stay with my sister and her family," Sam offered suddenly. "Rebecca is just outside town with her husband and 3 children. They have a spare room, and she'd welcome the company." "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose on strangers." "Nonsense. Rebecca's been longing for female companionship since moving here. Besides, her children could benefit from your educational expertise." Sam's expression grew earnest. "Consider it a mutually beneficial arrangement." Margaret studied his face, noting the genuine concern in his brown eyes. "You're quite generous, Mr. Crawford. I accept your offer gratefully." 3 days later, Margaret had settled into the Fletcher household with surprising ease. Rebecca Fletcher, Sam's younger sister, proved to be a warm and spirited woman who immediately took Margaret under her wing. Her husband James worked as the town's general storekeeper, and their 3 children, Emma, age 10, Thomas, 8, and little Sarah, 6, were eager students who hung on Margaret's every word. Margaret had secured the teaching position after a brief interview with Mrs. Henderson, though the stern woman had made it clear that her expectations were high and her patience limited. "The children are waiting for you," Rebecca announced as Margaret finished her morning tea. "Emma's been up since dawn, polishing her slate." Margaret smiled, gathering her shawl and the book she'd brought from Boston. "I confess to some nervousness. It's been 2 years since I last taught." "You'll do splendidly," Rebecca assured her. "Sam mentioned you came highly recommended." Margaret's cheeks flushed slightly. She hadn't exactly lied about her qualifications, but neither had she revealed the complete truth about her circumstances in Boston. Some secrets were better left buried. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a modest wooden structure with 6 windows and a bell tower. Inside, 12 children of various ages sat at rough-hewn desks, their faces ranging from curious to skeptical. Good morning, students, Margaret began, projecting confidence she didn't entirely feel. I'm Miss O'Sullivan, your new teacher. I'm delighted to make your acquaintances. A boy of perhaps 14 raised his hand. Miss, how long you planning to stay? Last teacher ran off quick as lightning. Margaret smiled calmly. I plan to remain as long as I'm needed, which I hope will be quite some time. What's your name? Billy Morrison. My pa says book learning ain't worth much when you're herding cattle. Your father raises cattle? Yes, miss. Got near 200 head. How fascinating. Tell me, Billy, how does your father track his livestock? Does he count them? Record their conditions? Plan their feeding schedules? Billy nodded slowly. Course he does. Then he uses mathematics, record keeping, and organizational skills daily. Book learning, as you call it, helps make those tasks more efficient. Margaret moved among the desks, her voice carrying clearly. Education isn't separate from life, it enhances every aspect of it. By midday, she had the children engaged in lessons that connected their daily experiences to academic concepts. They calculated the costs of supplies for their families' businesses, practiced writing letters to imaginary relatives, and discussed the geography of the Oregon Trail. During the lunch recess, Margaret stepped outside for fresh air and found Sam Crawford approaching with a steaming cup in his hands. Coffee, he explained, offering it to her. Rebecca thought you might need some sustenance. How thoughtful. Margaret accepted the cup gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. Your sister is remarkably considerate. She likes having you around, says it's nice to have someone to discuss books with. Sam leaned against the schoolhouse wall, his work shirt clean despite his morning at the forge. How was your first morning? Better than expected. The children are bright and curious once you capture their interest. That's more than the previous teacher managed. She spent most of her time complaining about their manners. Margaret sipped the coffee, studying Sam's profile. He was perhaps 30 years old, with strong features weathered by sun and wind. His hands, though calloused from smithing, moved with surprising gentleness when he gestured. Mr. Crawford, may I ask what brought you to Cedar Ridge? My trade, mostly. A growing town needs a blacksmith, and I needed a fresh start. His tone suggested shared understanding. Sometimes the past requires leaving behind. Indeed it does. They stood in comfortable silence, watching children play in the dusty schoolyard. Margaret found herself relaxing in Sam's presence, a sensation she hadn't experienced in months. Miss O'Sullivan, a small voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked down to see Sarah Fletcher tugging at her skirt. Yes, sweetheart? Will you teach us about flowers? Mama said you might know about growing things. Margaret smiled, kneeling to Sarah's level. I'd be delighted to. Perhaps we could start a school garden. Sarah clapped her hands excitedly and ran to share the news with her classmates. Sam watched the exchange with obvious appreciation. You have a gift with children, he observed. I've always enjoyed their company. They possess such honest enthusiasm for learning. Unlike adults, who often complicate simple matters. Margaret glanced at him sharply, wondering if his comment held deeper meaning. Sometimes complications arise from circumstances beyond our control. True enough? Sam pushed away from the wall as the school bell rang. I should return to my forge. Thank you for the conversation, Miss O'Sullivan. Margaret, she corrected impulsively. Please call me Margaret. His smile transformed his entire countenance. Margaret, then. And I'm Sam. Over the following weeks, Margaret established herself as an integral part of Cedar Ridge's community. Her teaching methods proved so effective that even the most reluctant students began showing improvement. She organized spelling competitions, started a small library with books donated by grateful parents, and indeed created the school garden Sarah had requested. Her relationship with Sam deepened gradually through daily encounters and shared meals at the Fletcher household. She learned that he had come to Colorado from Ohio after losing his wife to fever 3 years prior. He had no children, a fact that seemed to sadden him greatly. I always imagined I'd have a house full of little ones by now, he confided one evening as they walked along the creek that bordered town. Mary and I had such plans. Margaret's fingers tightened on her shawl. I'm sorry for your loss. She must have been very special. She was. Kind, gentle, patient with my moods. Sam picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the water. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever feel ready to open my life to someone again. Time has a way of healing wounds we think will never mend, Margaret said softly. though some scars remain tender longer than others. Sam studied her expression in the fading light. You speak as one who understands such pain. Margaret hesitated, then decided on partial honesty. I was engaged to be married in Boston. The arrangement ended abruptly, leaving me to reassess my future entirely. His loss, I'd say. The simple declaration warmed Margaret more than elaborate compliments might have. You're very kind, Sam. I'm honest. There's a difference. He offered his arm as they turned back toward town. Would you consider joining me for Sunday supper tomorrow? Rebecca mentioned you'd accepted an invitation to the Matthews farm. I did, yes. Mrs. Matthews wants to discuss her daughter's progress in arithmetic. Perhaps the following Sunday, then? Margaret's pulse quickened. I would enjoy that very much. As autumn approached, their friendship blossomed into something deeper and more complex. Sam began finding excuses to visit the schoolhouse, bringing small gifts, a slate he'd repaired, wildflowers from his sister's garden, books he'd ordered from Denver. Margaret found herself looking forward to these visits with increasing anticipation. The turning point came during the town's harvest celebration. Margaret had organized a demonstration of the children's academic progress, and the entire community gathered to witness their presentations. Billy Morrison surprised everyone by delivering a detailed analysis of cattle ranching economics, while Emma Fletcher recited poetry with remarkable eloquence. Miss O'Sullivan has accomplished more in 2 months than we've seen in years, Mrs. Henderson announced to the assembled crowd. Cedar Ridge is fortunate to have secured such dedicated instruction. As applause filled the schoolhouse, Margaret felt a profound sense of belonging she had never experienced, even in Boston's refined circles. When Sam appeared at her side, his pride evident in his expression, she realized that her feelings for him had grown far beyond friendship. Congratulations, he said quietly. You've won over the entire town. Thank you. I couldn't have managed without everyone's support. Don't underestimate your own contributions, Margaret. You've brought something special to this place. Their eyes met and held, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Margaret felt her cheeks warm under his intense gaze. Sam, There you are. Rebecca appeared suddenly, slightly breathless. Margaret, Mrs. Patterson wants to discuss enrolling her youngest son. And Sam, James needs your opinion about expanding the store. The moment dissolved, leaving Margaret with a sense of words left unsaid and opportunities missed. October arrived with crisp mornings and brilliant foliage that painted the mountains in shades of amber and crimson. Margaret had been in Cedar Ridge for nearly 3 months, and her contentment grew daily. The children adored her, parents respected her methods, and the community had embraced her completely. Her relationship with Sam continued to deepen, though neither had spoken openly of their growing attachment. They shared long walks, animated discussions about books and ideas, and comfortable silences that spoke of deep understanding. The crisis came on a Thursday afternoon when Margaret was dismissing her students. A well-dressed stranger appeared in the schoolhouse doorway, his expensive suit and polished boots marking him as a man from the eastern cities. Miss O'Sullivan? His voice carried a Boston accent that made Margaret's blood run cold. Yes? She kept her tone steady despite the tremor in her hands. I'm Detective Harrison Wells. I've been searching for you on behalf of certain parties in Boston. Margaret's worst fears materialized in an instant. I don't understand. I think you do, Miss O'Sullivan, or should I say Mrs. Jonathan Ashworth. The sound of her married name struck like a physical blow. Margaret sank into her chair, her carefully constructed new life crumbling around her. I'm not married, Mr. Wells. According to Massachusetts law, you are. Your husband is quite anxious for your return. My husband is dead, Margaret said flatly. Jonathan died in a carriage accident 6 months ago. Wells consulted a small notebook. Interesting. Mr. Ashworth seems remarkably healthy for a deceased man. In fact, he's offered a substantial reward for information leading to your whereabouts. Margaret's mind raced. If Jonathan lived, then her carefully planned escape had been for nothing. Worse, her marriage to him remained legally binding despite his cruelty and the threats that had driven her west. Miss Margaret? Emma Fletcher's voice came from the doorway. Mama sent me to walk you home. Wells turned toward the child with interest. How charming. A family connection, perhaps? Emma, please wait outside, Margaret instructed firmly. When the girl had reluctantly obeyed, she faced Wells with whatever dignity she could muster. What do you want? Your return to Boston, naturally. Mr. Ashworth has arranged passage on next week's stage. And if I refuse? Wells smiled coldly. I think you'll find cooperation more pleasant than the alternatives. Your husband can be quite persuasive when necessary. The implicit threat chilled Margaret to her core. She remembered all too well Jonathan's methods of persuasion, the bruises carefully hidden beneath long sleeves, the isolation from friends and family, the gradual erosion of her spirit through constant criticism and control. I need time to consider your proposal. 24 hours, Mrs. Ashworth. After that, I'll be forced to take more direct action. Wells departed, leaving Margaret alone with her shattered peace. She sat in the empty schoolhouse as shadows lengthened, trying to reconcile her present happiness with her inescapable past. Sam found her there an hour later, still staring at her hands folded in her lap. Margaret, Rebecca was worried when you didn't return for supper. He approached cautiously, sensing her distress. What's wrong? She looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I have to leave, Sam. Leave? Why? Has something happened? Margaret rose shakily, gathering her few possessions with mechanical precision. There are circumstances from my past that I cannot escape. I should never have come here, never have allowed myself to believe. Believe what? Sam caught her hands, stilling their nervous movement. Talk to me, Margaret. Whatever's troubling you, we can face it together. No, we cannot. She pulled away gently but firmly. Some situations have no solution, Sam. Some mistakes cannot be undone. I don't accept that. There's always a way forward if you're willing to fight for what matters. Margaret's composure finally cracked. Fight? Against what? Against the law. Against social conventions that trap women in situations they cannot escape. Against men who view wives as property to be reclaimed regardless of their wishes. Sam's expression hardened with understanding. You're married. Yes, she whispered. I ran away, Sam. I let everyone believe I was unmarried because I couldn't bear to admit the truth. My husband, he's not a kind man. When I learned of his death, I thought I was finally free. But apparently the reports were false. Where is he now? Boston. He sent someone to retrieve me. Sam was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. Do you love him? No, I never did. Our marriage was arranged by our families for financial considerations. I was young and had no say in the matter. Then don't go back. Margaret stared at him in amazement. Sam, you don't understand. I have no choice. He's my legal husband. The law. The law is hundreds of miles away. This is Colorado territory, not Massachusetts. That detective threatened. What detective? Sam's voice took on a dangerous edge. Someone threatened you? Margaret quickly explained Wells's visit and ultimatum. As she spoke, she watched Sam's expression grow increasingly grim. I won't let anyone force you to leave against your will, he said quietly. You can't stop them, Sam. They have the law on their side. Maybe. But they don't have right on their side, and they don't know this territory like I do. That evening, Sam convened an emergency meeting with several trusted townsmen, James Fletcher, Dr. Morrison, Billy's father, Sheriff Davies, and Judge Parker, who rode circuit through the territory. Margaret remained at the Fletcher house, torn between hope and despair. The situation is complex, Judge Parker acknowledged after hearing Sam's explanation. Eastern divorce laws are indeed restrictive for women. However, Colorado territory operates under different statutes. What are our options? Sam asked. Sheriff Davies spoke up. If Mrs. Ashworth fears for her safety, she could request territorial protection. We have authority to deny extradition in cases involving potential harm. Would such protection hold up legally? Dr. Morrison inquired. Judge Parker nodded slowly. Possibly. Territorial courts have significant autonomy, especially regarding domestic disputes. If we can demonstrate that returning to Massachusetts would endanger Miss Ashworth's welfare, we could petition for a protective order. What kind of evidence would we need? Sam pressed. Documentation of abuse, witness testimony, medical records if they exist. Sam's jaw tightened. What if we could prove the marriage was coerced or involved fraud? That would be stronger grounds still. Why? Do you suspect such circumstances? I intend to find out. The next morning, Sam appeared at the schoolhouse before Margaret arrived, positioning himself at his forge with a clear view of both buildings. When Detective Wells approached the school, Sam intercepted him. You must be the gentleman from Boston, Sam said cordially, though his massive frame effectively blocked the doorway. I am. And you are? Samuel Crawford, the town blacksmith. I understand you're here about Miss O'Sullivan. Wells's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Ashworth, you mean? Yes, I'm here to escort her home. Funny thing about that, Sam said conversationally. Judge Parker was asking me yesterday about verification of marriage records. Seems there's been some confusion about legal documentation. I assure you my authority is quite legitimate. Oh, I'm sure it is. But the judge mentioned something about territorial requirements for extradition. Paperwork, witness statements, that sort of thing. You wouldn't happen to have brought those documents, would you? Wells shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Ashworth's marital status is a matter of public record in Massachusetts. But not in Colorado territory, apparently. Judge Parker was very specific about that point. Sam smiled pleasantly. Perhaps you should consult with our local authorities before proceeding. Wouldn't want any legal complications, would you? Are you threatening me, Mr. Crawford? Not at all. Simply ensuring everyone follows proper procedures. We're very particular about the law here in Cedar Ridge. Before Wells could respond, Sheriff Davies appeared at Sam's shoulder. Morning, Sam. Is there some sort of problem? Just discussing legal procedures with this gentleman from Boston, Sheriff. He's interested in territorial extradition policies. Davies nodded seriously. Complex area of law? That. I'd recommend consulting with Judge Parker before taking any official action. He's very strict about proper documentation. Wells realized he was outmaneuvered, at least temporarily. Where might I find Judge Parker? He's due back from Denver tomorrow. Until then, I'd suggest you make yourself comfortable at the hotel. Can't have visitors conducting official business without proper supervision. After Wells departed, clearly frustrated, Sam turned to the sheriff with gratitude. Thank you, Tom. That bought us some time. How much time do you think we have? Davies asked. Enough, I hope. There's something about this situation that doesn't ring true. I'm going to send some telegrams to Boston. Sam spent the afternoon at the telegraph office, sending carefully worded inquiries to contacts he'd maintained from his previous life in Ohio. By evening, he had received several responses that confirmed his suspicions. He found Margaret in Rebecca's kitchen, mechanically helping with supper preparations while the children chattered around her. Her face lit up when he entered, though worry lines still creased her brow. Any word from your detective friend? Rebecca asked. He's consulting with local authorities, Sam replied carefully. Margaret, could I speak with you privately? They stepped onto the porch, where the evening air carried the scent of wood smoke and approaching winter. Margaret wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders, more from nervousness than cold. I've been making inquiries, Sam began, about your husband and the circumstances of your marriage. Margaret tensed. Sam, please don't. Jonathan Ashworth is indeed alive, but he's also deeply in debt and facing serious legal troubles. It seems he's been involved in several questionable business ventures that have recently collapsed. I don't understand what that has to do with. He needs you back, Margaret. Not because he loves you or misses you, but because your family's marriage settlement included property that he can only access while married to you. If you remain missing long enough, he loses everything. Margaret stared at him in amazement. How could you possibly know all this? I wasn't always a small-town blacksmith. In my previous life, I dealt with men like Ashworth regularly. I recognized the signs. Sam moved closer, his voice gentle but urgent. There's more. I have it on good authority that your marriage contract contained irregularities that could invalidate the entire arrangement. What kind of irregularities? Your consent was never properly witnessed according to Massachusetts law. The ceremony took place while you were technically still a minor, and your parents signed documents without your knowledge or agreement. Margaret's legs gave way, and she sank onto the porch steps. That's not possible. Sam knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. It is possible, and it's true. Judge Parker believes we have grounds to petition for annulment based on fraud and coercion. But even if that were true, the legal process could take years. Not necessarily. Territorial law moves faster than state courts, especially when personal safety is involved. Margaret looked into his eyes, hardly daring to hope. You really believe I could be free? I believe you already are free, Margaret. We just need to make it official. Sam's thumb traced gentle circles on her knuckles. The question is, what do you want to do with that freedom? Her answer came without hesitation. I want to stay here. I want to teach the children, be part of this community, build a life that matters. And personally? What do you want personally? Margaret's cheeks flushed, but she met his gaze steadily. I want to explore whatever this is between us, Sam. I want to see where it might lead without the shadow of the past hanging over us. Sam's smile was radiant. Then we'll fight for that future together. The next morning brought Judge Parker's return and a formal hearing regarding Margaret's legal status. Detective Wells presented his case with growing frustration as his documentation proved insufficient under territorial law. Your Honor, Judge Parker addressed the small courtroom. Based on the evidence presented, I find significant grounds to question the validity of the alleged marriage between Miss O'Sullivan and Mr. Ashworth. Furthermore, territorial law grants this court jurisdiction to protect residents from potential harm, regardless of external legal claims. Wells leaped to his feet. This is highly irregular. Massachusetts law clearly. Mr. Wells, the judge interrupted firmly, you are in Colorado territory now, operating under our legal statutes. Unless you can provide proper documentation of a valid marriage contract and evidence that Miss O'Sullivan would not be endangered by forced return to Massachusetts, this court will not compel her departure. I demand the right to appeal this decision. You may certainly petition the Territorial Supreme Court, though I should mention that process typically requires several months. Judge Parker's tone suggested this was not unexpected news. In the meantime, Miss O'Sullivan remains under territorial protection. Wells left Cedar Ridge that afternoon on the eastbound stage. His mission failed. Margaret watched him go from the schoolhouse steps, hardly believing her ordeal was over. Epilogue. 1 year later, Margaret O'Sullivan, now legally confirmed as having never been validly married, stood in the same schoolhouse where her new life had begun. But today, instead of teaching arithmetic and literature, she wore a gown of cream-colored silk and carried a bouquet of late summer roses. The entire population of Cedar Ridge had gathered to witness her marriage to Samuel Crawford, a celebration that began at the church and continued well into the evening at the community hall. Judge Parker performed the ceremony, declaring with obvious satisfaction that he had rarely seen two people more perfectly suited for each other. You look beautiful, Sam murmured as they swayed to music provided by the Morrison family band. I feel beautiful, Margaret replied, and meant it completely. The haunted look that had shadowed her eyes upon arrival had been replaced by confidence and joy. No regrets about choosing a humble blacksmith over city life? Margaret's laugh was music to his ears. None whatsoever. Though I should point out that you're hardly humble, Mr. Crawford. The way you fought for me was quite heroic. I fought for us, Mrs. Crawford, and I'd do it again without hesitation. Mrs. Crawford, Margaret mused. I like the sound of that. As the evening progressed, Margaret reflected on the transformation her life had undergone. She still taught school, though she and Sam were already discussing the possibility of children of their own to join the classroom. The community that had once seemed strange and rough now felt like home in the deepest sense. Rebecca Fletcher approached with tears in her eyes. I'm so happy for you both, she said, embracing Margaret warmly. You've brought such light to this place and to my brother's life. She has indeed, Sam agreed, wrapping his arms around both women. Cedar Ridge gained a treasure when Margaret arrived, though I don't think any of us realized it at first. As the celebration wound down and neighbors began departing for their homes, Margaret found herself standing once again at the threshold of the schoolhouse, but this time with her husband beside her and her future stretching ahead like an open book. Ready to begin our new chapter, Mrs. Crawford? Sam asked, offering his arm. Margaret took it gladly, her smile reflecting all the love and hope in her transformed world. I've been ready since the day I met you, Mr. Crawford. I just didn't know it yet. They walked together toward their future, leaving behind the shadows of the past and embracing the bright promise of tomorrow. In the distance, the mountains stood sentinel over their small town, protecting dreams that had taken root in unexpected places and flourished beyond all imagining.